So I'm just checking to see if I actually got a response to my my emails to the CEO of NZXT. I go back actually several weeks. No. Today's video is brought to you by NZXT, but not in ways that they ever wanted. Okay, so I didn't. Oh man, I'm so sick of companies being trashy. Okay, so there's obviously, you guys have seen by now, the NZXT video that Steve did. I'm not piggybacking on Steve. Steve is the point of, he's the source of the news. I'm reporting on the news that Steve broke. So it's no different than if I reported if it was Digital Trends or Tom's Hardware or whatever, right? So Steve just happens to be the point of information for this moving forward. But I don't want to talk a lot about what NZXT has been doing. I honestly think you should just go watch his video. Yes, it's long, but it's for a reason. It is one of the most anti-consumer things I've seen a company do in a long, long time. And I really don't want to talk a lot about, I don't want to recap Steve, because it would be doing a disservice to the amount of information that's actually in that video. Obviously, I have to talk about this too because we have run NZXT ads specifically on the player PCs and the mentioning that there is a flex option in there, but we'll get to that point shortly and how I plan on dealing with that moving forward and what I'm doing right this very second, actually. You just saw me reference emails I've been writing to the CEO that actually have gone unanswered now for like 12 days or something. I actually started emailing them a while back. Zero response. Anyway, I digress. We'll get back to that in a moment. This will be all over the place, so buckle up. It's gonna be bumpy and probably be inverted at a few points, you know. It was inverted. Just like the industry right now, very inverted, and people are falling out of the roller coaster because they got stuck mid-loop and the safety bars are broken. At least that's what it feels like as an industry ever since 2020. I do want to talk about a couple points of Steve's video, things that shocked me. So for instance, I was disappointed when they first talked about Flex and the fact that you don't get to own the PC, because even in the worst rent-to-own type programs, whether we're talking about refrigerators and like, there's actually a place called like rent-to-own center or rent-a center or whatever. Like you could, it doesn't matter if it was a refrigerator or a couch or TV, you could rent to own the thing. You paid weekly installments. It was extremely expensive. In fact, it was way more expensive. If you could afford to do that weekly, just save the money weekly and buy the thing outright from like Walmart, and then you never have to worry about someone knocking on your door to come collect because you missed a payment. Like it's gross. It's legal, but it's gross. But at least you got to own the thing. By the end of the term, you got to own it. You got to own the $300 couch that you paid $1,500 for by the end of it, maybe more. You get to own your $250 Vizio TV that you now paid $1,000 for at the end of the 12 months of payments, of weekly 52 payments or whatever it is. But at least you got to own it. I'm reminded of like back in the 90s and the 2000s, they still exist to this day, but I remember I wanted a nice set of wheels for my very first car. It was a truck. It was a 1985 Ford Ranger. It was fuel injected. It wasn't carbureted. It was the first year of the fuel injection. I digress. I wanted a nice set of wheels, so I went to one of those rent-to-own centers, and it was like $100 a week for a year. The wheels were probably no more expensive than like $150 a wheel at the most. Like I could have gone to Pep Boys and actually, for what I was gonna have to pay per week, just save the money for a month, and I could have bought cheap Pep Boy wheels for my truck. That's actually what I did. Actually, no, I digress. I went to go do that, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to one of those used wheel tire centers, and I got some bent up Steelies put on my truck, but hey, I was 17. What was I gonna do? I didn't have any money. The problem is, 17-year-olds are also the kind of person that this predatory type of rental program is tailored for. That's what sucks about that. Especially anyone that doesn't know any better. And knowing better is up to you to be able to identify if something's a bad deal. Like SIs, right? There's a lot of bad deals when it comes to system integrators. There's a lot of good deals, somewhat, but there's a lot of bad deals. And you can't spend money on a bad deal and then say, well, that was a bad deal, I'm mad. Because you still made the decision to purchase the system. At least you purchased the system. You have value of it now. Although what you just owned from day one is worth less than what you paid for it. I guess that works with cars too. Going back to the rental program, I was very disappointed that you never got a chance to own it. But that's up to you to go whether or not that's worth it to you. I thought at the end of 2 years, it would make more sense for you to then at that point be like, okay, you own the system clean and clear. Because as Steve showed with his charts, you paid more than double what that system's worth at the end of that 2 years, but at least you got to own it. Or at least if you traded in the system for an upgrade that you could get at 2 years, you got some sort of credit, because now they have that system back. They've made twice their money on what it's worth. They still have the system. Give some sort of incentive to trade in. But no, because, well, predatory practices, right? So I was extremely disappointed with that. But what shocked me, what truly, truly shocked me, was not the bait and switch stuff. I feel like companies do that all the time. I'm not saying it's okay, but that didn't shock me as much as the fact that they pushed the purchase through when Steve did a secret shopper without ID verification. Let me back up a little bit here. So Steve, when he does secret shopper, and myself too, when I do secret shopper, I use a real person to do it. That way, if ID checks and stuff are needed, they can submit an ID for fraud verification and all that sort of stuff, and it will go through. Steve uses a fake name and all that. I'm not sure how he's doing that, honestly, because usually names and payments have to align, but whatever, I digress. At one point in the rental process, you have to submit a copy, like a picture of your driver's license to confirm that this is not identity theft, that somebody is not gonna set up this service using somebody else's information, keep the PC, and then that person's on the hook for identity theft of owning, like going after collections for that system. It happens all the time, especially this time of year. So when it got to that point where he had to submit the driver's license photo, he wasn't able to because it's not a real person. So at that point, he thought the investigative process was done. Like, I'm not gonna get past this point. Good on you, NZXT, for at least verifying that ID theft and it isn't happening until the next day when he saw that the order had been pushed through anyway, and it showed a green check mark saying that the ID had been verified, and then off it went to be shipped to him. At that point, that was like sand dunes level of red flag went up, waving everywhere, saying something's not right. Obviously, they wanted the money way more than they wanted to make sure the money belonged to the person buying the system. So that is a huge, huge problem of, I guess at this point now, people have incentive to try to defraud and do identity theft with NZXT, because obviously they're encouraging it because they're not verifying IDs. The other thing too is NZXT has it written in their contract that they can do anything they want with your information. What information will they have for you? Well, if you are sending in photos of your driver's license, they now know that the information you're providing is real. On that driver's license is going to include date of birth, it's going to include address, it's going to include obviously your driver's license number, which now gives access to DMV stuff to potentially even look up more personal information for you. Credit card information, because if you have to buy it, you're going to buy it digitally with like a credit card or a bank card or Apple Pay or whatever forms of payment they accept. They have that information now, which they're going to have anyway because they're selling systems. So you have to trust that they're going to be smart with encrypting that data so it doesn't become a breach point where people now have people's pictures of their license and all their payment information and stuff. But what about when you turn in the system at the end of you deciding it's no longer worth the monthly payment? Well, if you don't wipe that drive and know what you're doing and be able to truly wipe the drive to a point to where it cannot be recovered, unfortunately, most drives cannot be completely cleared of being able to get information from it unless you physically destroy it. Anything that's left on that drive that they recover is also theirs to do with however they see fit. The problem is it actually says that in the contract, however they see fit. Now what are they going to do with it? They're going to sell that information. For a lot of companies, the selling of the information they collect during purchasing is just as profitable as the thing and the markup that they get from the product. So for instance, let's say you have a 5-point markup, or means 5% of whatever, like 5% above what it costs them to get that product is their profit. So you take a $1,000 graphics card, you sell it for $1,000, you got it for $950, you made $50. That's like the 5-point markup, right? It might actually be more valuable for them to sell the information of you than the $50 they made off the card. So it's a big, huge sub-business that exists almost everywhere, and it sucks. It's unfortunately the digital age, and all of our information is getting sold everywhere. But it's like they are taking it above and beyond the level of to do with, as at least most people will say, we are going to sell your information to a third party. They say it. NZXT says they're going to do whatever the hell they want with it. So that's gross. That's disgusting. Let's talk about ways that this program could have been positive. It could never have existed. There's one. 2, clearly they had a lot of inventory that was old and not really relevant, like 12400Fs. Who the hell wants to buy a pre-built with a 12400F in there? Apparently people want to rent one. I don't know. But They had mountains of hardware, potentially millions of dollars worth of hardware that was old and irrelevant to sell as a new system unless they heavily discounted it, which in my mind would have been an option as well. Sell it for like below cost, you recoup some of it, and at least you put some systems out there that are going to be useful for someone that they could get on the cheap, to build the PC industry back up, getting people involved and in the industry at a low entry point of cost, and then their enthusiasm grows from there, and it helps bolster the entire industry. Unfortunately, when NZXT has created here a giant sinkhole in the industry, where the industry as a whole, like PC, just looks bad because of this. There's a lot of reasons PC industry looks bad right now, but this is going to be the one that's going to be talked about now for probably years at this point. It is a perfect model of what not to do if any other brands are thinking about doing something similar to this, because PC renting is not something that has existed for a long time. Like GPU renting has. That was a terrible deal too, but GPU renting has been a thing, but not entire system renting. I digress. They could have also donated all of those components to something beneficial. They could have donated it to STEM centers, like learning centers, community outreach programs, schools, children's hospitals. There's all kinds of things they could have done with that hardware that would have been a full write-off of the value they acquired the product for up to a certain point. Although NZXT is a massive multi-million-dollar company, they could have written it off. And anything that could have been written off could have been goodwill towards the brand and the community that would have been seen in positive light. I'm going to ask you to put yourself in neutral center right now, to consider how this optics would have looked versus the way it went down. You know the way it went down. You're mad about it. I'm mad about it. That's easy to stay mad. The hard part right now is going to bring yourself back to center and ask yourself what would have gone through your head if you heard and you saw an article. NZXT donates $10 million of PCs and components to various learning centers and labs and maybe like folding research, just to know that that stuff was given away to the community. How would you have felt about that? I'm sure it would have been more positive than how you feel right now. That, I'm sure right now, is an option they're kind of wishing they had taken, because I feel like there's very few situations a company cannot recover from. And I'm not sure the black eye that NZXT has right now, given the bait and switch, the data mining, the just ridiculous pricing of their systems, the fact that you never get to own it. I don't think this is a black eye that can truly be even put makeup on to get past it. I think this is the downward trajectory that is now a nosedive for the company. They've had some nosedives in the past. We all know about the H1 fires and stuff. I thought they sort of leveled out from there and were kind of climbing their way back up. We had seen like good products come from them. I do like the Kraken AIOs. I like screens and stuff on AIOs. I like the fact that they made it bigger to cover the new IHSs and stuff. I felt like their power supplies are actually really good. They're digital power supplies. I mean, heck, even Steve was advertising them. If Steve's advertising something, you know it's got to be good, right? But then to suddenly just be like, nope, you know what? We're going to try a death loop. Oh no, we can't pull out of this. That's what I feel like NZXT is doing right now. So what I need to address now is what I'm going to do about it. Because it's no secret that NZXT is a sponsor of the channel. But it's also no secret that when a sponsor does something that is just so grossly anti-consumer that we can't overlook it. I mean, every company has done crappy things. Every single company has done crappy things. And usually they get their hands slapped in some way by the market or by the consumers or YouTubers, influencers, whatever. And then they try and course correct. This is not one that can, in my opinion, be overlooked. I mean, this is intentional. This is intentional damage financially to the people that find themselves in a situation where they are going to utilize this service. I still think the responsibility falls solely on the person signing up for the service to investigate whether or not the service makes sense to you. But unfortunately, people don't do that. So I have started removing every single mention of the pre-builds and the flex from our videos. Now here's the downside. I can't pull the videos down and upload them and cut it out. The last thing I want to do is also have you guys get 15 notifications of new videos that went up that are old. I mean, that's just going to destroy your sub box. I'm not going to do that. So I'm utilizing YouTube's built-in editor where I can trim out portions of the video, and I'm trimming out the ads one at a time. The problem is it only lets me do one at a time, and it takes several hours for that process to happen. So it's taking time for those to process. So know that I'm taking them out. I have already removed the links. The links are gone. I think by now people have to know, like, don't use or look at Flex because it's terrible. That's on us, specifically me, for not researching it a little bit further. I felt like it was it wasn't a good deal. And that's why I refused to even do more mentioning of, like, okay, if you can't afford to buy the PC outright, they have this kind of a subscription service, which I'll never promote another subscription service moving forward because it's too easy for them to change things after the fact. And then, it's like, imagine if I did a tweet that was like, I love computers and I love the computer community, and it gets 50,000 likes. And then I go in and I edit that tweet that says, F you all, computers suck. Well, it's after the fact, right? So if things change after we run an ad, then I have no control over that, and it sucks. We are going to be looking more closely at every single sponsor moving forward. Anything that involves a EULA or user agreement, when it comes, like, I don't want to promote services at all moving forward, but we're going to more deeply now look into this sort of stuff, which is actually advice that I got from several peers saying, because I said, am I supposed to read every warranty card on every product that has ever existed? And the answer is no. Like, on products, no. Just high-level warranty stuff is fine. Like, it's a 5-year limited warranty. They usually put the limitations in there. That's easy to sift through. But if it comes down to a service, then yeah, it should 1,000% be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. Not just to protect us, but also to protect the consumer. So, failed on that aspect when it comes to Flex. I felt like it was a bad deal, but at the same time, I don't think you should be getting a computer if you can't afford it outright in the beginning. Like, I don't believe in credit. I don't like credit. I don't like using credit. So Affirm, unfortunately, in this instance, would have been a better option because at least you own the product. I would much rather you borrow money from your grandma or something than ever get caught in the trap of this type of thing. So I definitely am upset that this all went down because I think my reputation is always going to be dedicated to you guys on being transparent with the way we operate, but also not pushing you guys towards something that would be bad for the industry. So when the Flex stuff was mentioned, I definitely pushed back against it. Didn't want to make a video about it. We didn't make a video about it. I'm glad we didn't because so much has changed after the fact. It just tells me now in the future the kind of stuff we should never do again. So at least we have that going forward. Like, no longer will we talk about a subscription type service or whatever. The other things we don't talk about, consumables like vitamins, like AG1, G Fuel, medical services, subscriptions for like the BetterHelp stuff. I think mental health is important. There's just too many other things going on in terms of the mental health industry when it comes to like laws and regulations for each state. It's impossible for me to talk about that and have it be relevant to everyone all over the place. So we just choose not to. But this is now on the list. Leasing services should never be on that list, and that's what I'm going to do in the future for you guys. But moving forward, we're not going to be working with NZXT. I don't see it being possible with their current model of how they're operating to be able to, in good conscience, work with them moving forward. There's so much that came to light in Steve's video that we weren't aware of, and it's difficult to know some of this stuff without that level of research being done. And I'm not a journalist, I'm not a researcher. And I'm not trying to wipe my hands of it. It's just, I'm not a journalist. Steve's the journalist. He found the information and I'm reporting on it and making my decision based on what we found out. Just like with the EK stuff, just like with the ASUS stuff. So that's my commitment, at least moving forward, is NZXT is not going to be a part of my channel moving forward. There's some obviously some ad campaign left in December that we will not be airing. And I've already told you what I'm doing with the previous ads, and give it time. YouTube's processing is slow. They are being cut out of the videos where there's mentions on them. We were actually in collaborations with developing a product with them that we're no longer going to do, obviously. Oh, NZXT, by the way, we're not doing that anymore. This is like the first time they're hearing it, actually. Because guess what? 2 weeks ago, I started emailing their CEO, needing to get in touch with them about some of my concerns. And I've emailed them again, since the Steve video, they're not responding. So what does that tell me? It tells me how they value us, which tells me everything I need to know about them. But yeah, there's zero, for me, I don't feel like there's any way NZXT can pull out of this. I think what NZXT needs to do right now is they need to modify the terms to be a rent to own. I think there needs to be a modification in there now where after so much time or whatever, it's yours, you own it. That's the first thing that needs to happen. The second thing that needs to happen is they need to be very clear on how they're going to use your data. That's important. And I feel like they might be even tiptoeing being illegal in the way that they're wording this, but I'm not a lawyer, I can't say that. I also feel like NZXT needs to modify their pricing because the pricing is a bit ridiculous, and maybe retroactively give credit towards those people that are already in the program. But I don't think they'll do that. And even if they did, it's too little too late. It helps the people that are already in the program, but this program needs to end. It should not exist as far as I'm concerned. There you go. You guys were all like, oh, Jay's going to talk about it or whatever, but I kind of had to at this point because everyone knows that NZXT is a sponsor of ours and so many other people. I mean, Zach's Tech Turf also did the same thing. He's taken the ads down. And I feel like that's the first step of how we move forward as somebody that's been in business with them. But yeah, this does give us things to consider as we move forward with other brands. Like anytime a brand does something major like this, that's just such a, I can't even think of the right words. Like Steve used predatory a lot, and that's true. It really does feel predatory. But anytime a brand screws up in this magnitude, it gives us ammunition to modify the way we do business to make sure we're not parts of this in the future, or give us recourse if a brand does do something after, let's say, ad rolls have already run, what we're going to do about it. So we're going to definitely have now more concrete clauses in our contract saying, if you do something as a dickhead, we're wiping our channel of you. Like that needs to be in there. So I don't know how we word that legally. I could probably put that in there, but then dickhead needs to be specified. Like what constitutes dickhead behavior? We'll just point them back to the NZXT video Steve did, because I mean, that's a good example. But anyway, there you go. That's it. The ads are disappearing from the channel as we move forward, slowly as YouTube processes them, and we're gonna move forward. And anytime anti-consumerism like this happens, we're gonna talk about it, especially if they're a sponsor of ours, and we're gonna fire them. Anything with those 4 letters, NZXT right now, equals FUCK.